In this lesson, we will set up brow controls. We'll have two levels of control. We'll have subcontrollers for each section, for each joint, and then we'll have a group control that drives them all. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with our subcontrollers first. We can create, let's say, a rectangle spline. And we're done. Not quite. Let's go ahead and make it editable and we'll scale it down. So we'll grab our rectangle selection tool and I'm going to bring the size down quite a bit. We could always resize this after we've repositioned it, so let's get it just a little bit smaller. We'll go back to model mode, and with axis snap, we're going to bring this up. Okay, I've snapped it to the very top of the head, and that's not where we want it, so it's going to bring it to brow A on the left side. Alright, so from here we can go back to point mode and now tweak the size to something that will work out well. So I've brought it so it's about the size of the joint. And now still in point mode, let's go ahead and turn off axis snap. Go to our move tool and just move this forward so that we can go ahead and select that control. Alright, great. So going back to model mode, we can now go ahead and clone this object down the rest of the brow. So I'll just go ahead and clone the rest of these. I've copied it with Control-C and use Control-V 3 more times. Now we can go to those objects, turn back on snapping, and then just snap them over. Alright, so at that point you'll just want to check to make sure, again, selection will be easy. And we're good to go here. So I'll now go in and rename these objects. The first will be anim L brow A01. And then we can just go ahead and copy the name and use that to rename the others. So that would be B, C, and D. Alright, let's say we go ahead and store these in our controls layer. Okay, so following that, we'll go back to our attributes manager, head over to the basic tab just to recolor these. So again, we can use a shade of blue, let's say a light blue, for our left side. Okay, so if we pull back, these are going to work out well. Before we go ahead and mirror these across, let's go ahead and work on our parent control. So I'll move over to the front view for that, and we'll grab our linear tool, and let's go ahead and switch snapping to grid snap. We're just drawing an upside down triangle. Okay, great. So, exiting snap mode, let's go ahead and center the axis on this. That's going to be mesh, center axis 2. Let's go back to point mode just to scale this down a bit more. Okay, great. And then we can start moving it over. Let's go back to our model mode. And just move this over to the brow. Then go back to our perspective view to reposition this. Okay, great. So we'll just place it so it's a bit closer. You can go ahead and bring it down some. And it's still kind of large, so I might go back to points and just go ahead and just bring down the size a bit more. Great. Okay, so after we've found a good position for it, we'd want to go to axis mode to make sure that the axis of this object is going to be centered between our brow controls. This would be a convenient place to control this from. It doesn't have to be perfect at all. We could just eye it by pulling it back and bringing it down, and we should be good to go. So we could exit axis mode after that. Let's rename this to NML Brow 01. We'll also have this stored in our controls layer. Next, we can go ahead and recolor it using the same color. So if I were to zoom in, we can now go to display color, choose the screen color tool, just so we can make sure we get that exact shade of blue we've been using. All right, great. So now we want all of these controls parented to our main control. So if we were to go to our move tool, this gives an idea of how these will work. All right, great. We want this control now to be parented underneath our upper jaw rig. All right, so I'm going to have this actually parented underneath the jaw control, just to make sure that all controls are nested under each other. All right, so let's go ahead and find the jaw control here. If you need to, feel free to collapse a few of your hierarchies. Here are controls, and here is the upper jaw. All right. So if we were to collapse this down, I'll just go ahead and add that. Great. We can now spend the time mirroring this across. So with that main control selected, we'll use our mirror tool to do that. Okay, great. Everything has mirrored over properly. So now what I'll do is just make sure that they're all recolored. So what we could always do is select the top control, right-click, and use the Select Children tool to select all of those objects. And then with them all selected, we can go ahead and choose a color for our right side. Let's say yellow. Great. All right, to clean these up, we need to make sure that we freeze their transforms. So again, we'll just select our parent controls, right-click and choose Select Children, and choose Freeze. All right, beautiful. So finally, we can go ahead and constrain our joints, and we can use PSR constraints. So if it makes it easier, we could always lock the face first. Now we can go in and grab our joint object, grab the brow control, and use a PSR constraint. Going back to the Attributes Manager, we can go in and rename these. And we have an idea of how to rename, so I'm not going to go ahead and spend the time in this lesson doing that. But since it's a PSR constraint, again, we'll use a prefix of PSR, and then following that, it's the name of the object that has been constrained. So it's this joint object that will finish the name out. Let's go to the next brow, select the control, and use a PSR constraint. And feel free to tear off this menu to take care of the others. So I'll pause the video and get the rest of these done. Okay, so each joint has now been constrained. Let's test this out. We'll grab our control and just start to move it around, and there we have it. When we undo back, everything appears to work out well. However, let's go ahead and grab our jaw control and start to rotate it. And you'll see a bit of jumping in the joints. When we undo back, we don't get the look we want, of course. And that's simply because of our priority. So rather than using the expression priority, let's go ahead and work with another one that will work out very well to get these taken care of. So I'll go ahead and just select one of the joints here and use scroll to first active to find the rest of them. And what we could do is actually work with generators. All right, so I'm going to switch the priority to generators, and I'm going to go ahead and set this to -1. Now, what is this doing? Well, typically you'd want to use this for complicated connections. So A lot of times when you're setting up an espresso rig, you can work with generators. If you're connecting objects to, let's say, a mesh, or if you're dealing with cloth, you can use generators set to -1, and that will take care of the behavior you need to get from your rig. So if you were to even take a look at your skin object, you'll notice that it also uses this generator's -1. Again, it's for more complicated setups here, and this works out very well for our constrained rig we've just built. All right, so I'm going to go in and make sure that the rest of these are set to generators -1. So let's do that for the rest of our brow joints, and I'll pause the video. Okay, so each priority has now been changed. Let's take a look. If we were to start to move our upper jaw control, notice there are no more jumping issues. When we undo back, everything works just fine. Beautiful. All right, so we have one more thing to do to finish our brow rig, and that is to take care of the brow geometry, that extra strip of mesh that needs to also deform. So let's go ahead and learn a neat technique for tying that to our brow deformations.